graduate from high school, then 4 years in college if you want a better chance of making more money, and then maybe even 2 to 4 more years in getting a professional degree in graduate school to really seal the deal. Then spend the next 30 to 40 years climbing the ladder in hopes of landing a job that actually pays you really well and can make you rich. Now that's the traditional route that's been pushed for a long time. But here's actually why that might not actually be the best choice for everyone. Now we have the rising cost of education. The one thing that's true is that school is really expensive, and increasingly so. Tuition fees have risen dramatically, leaving many graduates saddled with tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. The average student loan debt in the US is over $30,000 per borrower. And for those pursuing advanced degrees, those numbers can climb even higher. This debt can take decades to repay, eroding the financial gains one might hope to achieve by obtaining a higher salary from having a degree. And in essence, the traditional path, while seemingly lucrative, can leave individuals in a financial hole that takes years to escape. Moreover, the return on investment, also known as ROI, of a college education isn't guaranteed. Some degrees lead to higher paying careers, but others may not provide the financial stability needed to offset the cost of tuition. Some majors and some degrees just aren't that in demand. Now, with automation and globalization reshaping industries, the value of certain degrees is also becoming less predictable, making it harder to justify the expense. Climbing the corporate ladder involves a degree of luck as well. There's only so many CEO spots around and only so many Fortune 500 companies. There's not all that many executive positions either compared to all the other jobs that are lower in level. So inevitably, we're not all going to be making tens of millions of dollars and leading the largest firms in the world. And it's not just a matter of being the hardest worker or being the smartest worker, because you can only work so hard and only so smart, and there are still going to be things outside of your control. There's enough research and studies out there that detail that who you're born to, in terms of being born rich or not, can significantly impact your chances of becoming wealthy. Because, for example, did your family have connections to get you into an Ivy League or otherwise elite top tier university? And then were you able to use that and leverage connections you gained from there and opportunities to get a job in a top tier firm as your first job, which really just launches you into a great career? Or perhaps were you born to a less wealthy family, went to a state university, or maybe you even got into a pretty good school, maybe a top 50 or 100. But just that, going to a top tier university can actually make a huge difference whether you become an executive at a Fortune 500, making millions, or top out at a smaller company, maybe at the executive level, making hundreds of thousands, which is still great, but you can tell it's a pretty drastic difference. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it still takes a significant amount of time to get there. It's 12 years to graduate from high school, 4 years from college, 2 to 4 more years if you want an even more impressive resume, and then the next 30 to 40 years grinding, working hard, working smart, playing office politics, and doing a whole lot of things that you might not actually really enjoy. And then in the end, even all that might not be enough because let's say your school wasn't good enough, someone didn't like you enough, you're a little bit more different than everyone else, so you're not as relatable, or you just didn't have a strong enough network, and etc. And lastly, if you're in the middle of your career now, you may have some perspective on where you will eventually be, either from choice or just from lack of opportunities. And in my honest opinion, if you haven't done everything right exactly since high school and to the T in getting into an elite tier university and then landing that great first prestigious job, your earnings are generally going to be capped. For example, some people who had done everything right, usually from the guidance of their parents who were from, let's say, more educated, more wealthy backgrounds, these people will have the highest chance in making millions in their careers. For others, in a great case scenario, you might be able to make C-suite or executive at a medium-sized company and make $500,000 as your annual compensation, but even that's going to take decades to reach. There are also alternative paths versus the traditional one of going to school and climbing the corporate ladder. For example, The growth of the digital economy makes this one a bit of a no-brainer, but it's opened doors for internet content creators, influencers, and freelancers to monetize their skills and services online. Platforms like YouTube, Etsy, Fiverr, they're all great places to build your personal brand, sell your products, or offer services even if you don't have formal credentials. Because if you remember in the old days of YouTube, many creators were just regular people. Some were still in high school, some didn't have degrees, and some were just random people making content online, which now some of them are actually quite wealthy. Another popular alternative are trade careers, which can also offer lucrative opportunities without a 4-year degree. And these paths usually come with significantly lower costs, as vocational training programs typically take a fraction of the time and expense compared to traditional college degrees. Furthermore, trade careers also provide job security and stability, as many skilled trades are in high demand and pretty resistant to automation. For example, electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, they frequently enjoy robust earning potential, often rivaling or exceeding that of college graduates, but without the weight of student loan debt. This combination of affordability, shorter training periods, and longer term demand makes trade careers an appealing alternative for those seeking a practical route to financial success. Now, the importance of financial literacy. One of the biggest myths surrounding the traditional path is the assumption that higher income automatically leads to higher wealth. In reality, financial literacy plays a far more critical role in building and preserving wealth. Without proper money management skills, even high earners can find themselves living paycheck to paycheck or falling into debt. Now, financial literacy includes understanding budgeting, investing, saving, and the principles of compound interest, which is something I try to hammer in on my channel. Now, these skills can actually empower individuals to build wealth regardless of their income level or educational background. For example, someone with a modest income but excellent money management skills might actually achieve financial independence faster than a high earner who spends recklessly. Now, this one is actually a bit of my own story, but personally, I've spent a pretty long time in my career aggressively climbing the corporate ladder. And I spoke a little bit about this earlier in this video, but I did not do everything right to the T since the beginning. I didn't come from money. I grew up in a low income neighborhood with an underfunded school system. I didn't have the best grades. So that definitely wasn't enough to get into any Ivy League university. I also didn't pick computer science as my major either. So all that meant was that I wasn't going to get into a top tier firm as my first job. And even though I eventually went to a pretty reputable graduate school and got my MBA, the lack of having a great start at a top tier firm means climbing the ladder likely won't actually be enough for me, even though I am financially comfortable. So ultimately, by climbing the corporate ladder on my current trajectory and career path, I likely won't be able to make as much as I want. So that's actually what eventually helped me realize and shift my mindset and my perspective towards entrepreneurship. Because even though entrepreneurship is hard and many people start off by failing or taking years just to get something that's actually somewhat viable, when I think of how if I or we spent the last 18 to 20 years like we did in school, then add 15 more years of climbing the corporate ladder, for me it's been 15 years, building businesses instead of all those other things, well, many of us would probably have a few wildly successful businesses under our belt. Thanks for watching and please subscribe.